Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Cybersecurity Amplified and Intensified with your host, Eric Taylor, myself, Shiva Maharaj. Today is going to be a super quick one because Eric over here has some Chick-fil-A on the way and I cannot keep him back. That stuff is better when it is warm. With that, Eric, what's the first one on here?
What's going on, bud? So we definitely want to talk about a hacker released right around 180,000 credentials for SSL VPN to the dark web a couple of days ago through one of the Grove sites. It is really interesting to see this. At first we were going through, me internally and, a bunch of cybersecurity folks, and we started digging into this. The traversal flaw for the Fortinet OS or the 40 OS was from back in 2018. So we're like, at first it eluded us. I didn't notice that it was part of that CVE when we were seeing this data dump. And only after about an hour or so, I actually saw this. And the fact that I can say with 100% certainty, there are usernames and passwords on this data list that I picked randomly that are still working right now. So I don't know when these things were actually scanned, but there's definitely a whole bunch of people who do not have updated firewalls by any means, because this is pretty old.
So we're talking here about a 3-year-old vulnerability that has it been mitigated by Fortinet, at least within the last 3 years?
Oh, many times over.
So we are talking about IT practitioners, internal IT, and other providers who just did not update their firewalls. But here's the scary thing about SSL VPN, which is why I've been moving away from it. And you and I have been having conversations ad nauseum about this. How many people are still using SSL VPNs, but they're not using any type of MFA? And real MFA, not that text-based bullshit.
Not a whole lot of people. We're a Fortinet partner, so we primarily use, I think I've said it before, but we use primarily Fortinet or Palo Alto, just depending on the deal or the application base that was going to be put out there.
So what Eric is saying, small Fortinet, big Palo Alto.
They even have a city name behind them. Anyway, there's not many Fortinets, or there's not many firewalls out there that will actually invoke a 2FA token, like, a TOTP code, I should say, for 2FA.
I'm looking more for something like a duo push. I hate those TOTP based things.
And Fortinet has that. You have to use a dual gateway. Same thing with Palo Alto. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, back in the days when I used Sophos, you probably remember more than I do.
I'm a Meraki whore, so Cisco, shit's all built in.
Yeah.
Does it work flawlessly? No. Well, yes, it works flawlessly, but it takes a lot of effort to configure appropriately. So I guess my question to you was, how do people get in touch with you so you can scan their Fortinet, update it, and unfuck the situation they're in because their current IT provider fucked it up?
Really easy. Just barricadecyber.com. My calendar link is literally right there on the homepage, right there in that whole banner area. Make it really easy.
And what are they looking at time? Let's say they book you, whatever time. How long would it take you or a practitioner at your caliber to mitigate this?
Typically within the same day.
Okay. And are we talking about cycling passwords? Because I'm assuming SSL VPN passwords are probably connected to LDAP for their Active Directory, and these are actual user passwords that can get into email and all kinds of other platforms, especially if there's no MFA involved.
Yep. So for the tech savvy folks that will be either watching or listening to this, definitely go to my LinkedIn page. There's an Onion site. So, I'm not going to publicly, pump out the actual file just for legal reasons. But if you want to go to the Onion site on your own accord and download it and unpack it and all this stuff. But what we've been recommending for the more tech savvy folks is to do a user dump out of your Active Directory and leverage PowerShell to parse this text file and see if these usernames match up. And the file is a freaking garbage mess. It was not exported friendly.
I read that there were either 500,000 lines or 500,000 user pairs.
I don't have the exact number because we're still trying to clean up the whole mess ourselves.
Okay.
And just for legal reasons, I won't show the text file. But if you ever open up Notepad or Notepad ++ and you see those those black nulls all over the place, this thing is peppered with it. It's crazy. But
is this a vulnerability that could have been mitigated aside from being smart and updating your stuff, but with having MFA in place?
MFA would have definitely helped because they would have never been able to confirm a connection.
Okay. And this really goes into the recent 0-day that I know we have on deck here. Getting access to a network or a device with all of the privilege escalation vectors out there, now is even more time where you have to protect the identity and the network. I know for the last year, everyone's been saying protect the identity, protect the identity. Well, now you can escalate a standard user to an admin user, even if you're just doing Azure AD.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So which RCE is this one that we're looking at here?
This is around the Microsoft Word embedded ActiveX controls. So this, for those who are watching on the YouTube feed, this is a really, really ugly video, but in essence, if you actually go out there and look, there is a Word document that's actually being called, that's making an HTTP header call to a remote server that then enables Microsoft Calculator to be executed. So by embedding HTML code, once again, wrapped around ActiveX, it can be done to do whatever. So in a real world scenario, if I was hosting malicious content on a web server, I could change that to actually go to that web server and download a ransomware payload, a Mimikatz exploits, whatever, and be able to start infecting your network. There's still this whole thing could be dominoed, really. And this is really what people need to understand. The amount of CVEs are still out there. They're still hit and miss with print matrix, print hive exploits.
Print nightmare and hive nightmare, I think it is.
Yeah. Those exploits are still out there in the wild. So,
well, I mean, we're seeing Fortinet 2018 CVEs being leveraged today. So it's not like everything's going to be patched within 2 months of announcement.
Exactly. But this really needs to get a little bit more attention. People need to pay attention, because it's not just, we just got one exploit to worry about. We're CrowdStrike partners, and they released something earlier today where they are putting up mitigation steps and monitoring for the CVE.
But it's more monitoring, if I'm not mistaken, because even Microsoft doesn't have a mitigation for the full threat.
Correct.
Unless I'm mistaken here.
So they have what's called a workaround. So essentially, and sorry if I just gave someone Tourette's by scrolling that thing too fast for those on YouTube, but they want you to basically set up your 4 zones to disable ActiveX controls. Now, the one thing, a colleague of ours, Robert, down there in Florida, was like, well, we got customers who actually need ActiveX, but it will tell you right here, new ActiveX controls will not be installed. Previously installed ActiveX controls will continue to run. So as long as your systems have not been compromised with the new ActiveX control that's leveraging leveraging that exploit, then you should be okay.
Is CrowdStrike picking up on the new installs of ActiveX being compromised? As of right now, supposedly, yes. Definitely got some more calls coming up with, Cameron, who's been on our show several times. He'll be on this Monday.
Yep, he will. And we'll have some more conversations. So it may be something that we have them back again next week to talk about these type of things. And, it's not to, say you must use CrowdStrike, but
you should.
Yeah, we believe you should.
Through Eric or myself, don't go to any other partner. We only endorse ourselves.
But the thing that people need to understand is like, okay, we're using CrowdStrike as an example. And the reason why we went to CrowdStrike is because of this example. When you start seeing these CVEs coming out, you need to be having conversations with whoever your security whatever your security platform is, whatever your EDR platform is, and say, hey, this CVE is out. What are you doing to help me to detect and or mitigate these threats? And Shiva, you've been on those email chains. I'm quick to email everybody at CrowdStrike, and they are awesome. Yeah, I never got that with Bitdefender by any means. And, I know that they're, overseas, they're not based in the US, but
that's their problem. That's not ours. I mean, listen, you want to do business here, have local talent, have local techs here that can do something. Don't make me wait for Romanian time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So,
with that aside, this really goes back to having defense in depth and layering security with all the CVEs and all the approaches that can get in, unless I'm mistaken here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the top 3 things people should do right now, aside from doing that basic baseline mitigation? What should they do to harden their systems to attempt to prevent unauthorized access?
Least privilege. We talked about that a couple of times, making sure that people just don't have blind administrative rights to do whatever they need to do by either, leveraging GPOs or auto elevate or any of the other tools that are out there that can help mitigate that. Make sure you have proper MFA.
And what is proper MFA? We're talking text messages here, right?
Yeah.
And for those listening, I am joking.
Exactly. We strongly recommend Duo, but you do have Authy.
Well, I only recommend Duo.
That's because of the push notification, right?
So lazy. Give me the push. Let me decide if I want to ignore it or not just blindly accept it.
Well, see, push has a level of complexity that I like. Not only
it's something you have and something you have to do.
Exactly. You're not generating a code. So if something of mine got popped, somebody guessed my username and password to something, I'm getting a notification versus a TOTP code that has to be entered. And we know I have done it before with several partners where I can brute force that TOTP code for days before getting in.
But that goes back. A lot of vendors talk the security game, but they're so far from it. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've enumerated certain things that would make me cry knowing that my vendors have those in place.
Yeah.
But, all right, last thing on the docket here today, before I let you go for that Chick-fil-A, because as soon as we're off here, I'm driving to go get some myself.
Got you going.
Oh, hell yeah. Lockbit 2.0. A couple of weeks ago, our very first Friday series, we mentioned Lockbit and their TTPs and the fact that they're looking for insider threats. And a lot of the news agencies or cybersecurity news agencies have said that Lockbit 2.0 is finding great success with their new affiliate program. And I do want to highlight again that their affiliate program is going directly to insiders to gain access. And if this is true, how are you protecting your company against insider threats? And my typical question, Eric, what would you recommend? Top 3 things for them to defend against insider threats.
You love putting me on the spot. Top 3 things. What's your top 3 things? So, when you're talking about Lockbit, this really goes back to, what I just said. Lockbit is known for using insider threats. So making sure people don't have the access that they're supposed to, have least permissions invoked on a user. Even the domain admins, they need to have their own separate user when they're going in as a domain admin. And
we're not sharing credentials anymore?
No, you're not supposed to. This should be 2 users.
Dude. You think the average IT person or company is going to spend the extra money for that license?
Whatever.
It's only security at stake here.
Mm.
I mean, if we can use 3-year-old software on firewalls, what's a shared credential? Oh, I see it. I see it.
You see it. All right, everybody. So if this doesn't get edited out, that's my little guy Hunter. So anyway,
He's the boss of this podcast. So yeah,
right now,
always.
but anyway, but the third thing I would recommend is logging, because most of these ransomware attacks have a lot of signatures. They have IOCs that are key indications of a ransomware. You really need to make sure you're doing your logging and ingesting that and actually looking for those IOCs that, massive amounts of data being changed at one time is an indicator of compromise. Either somebody's deleting a metric foot ton of files or you're getting encrypted.
The only thing I would add there you're basically giving the same answer as before, because let's be honest, once you do the basics really well, you're in a better position. And
Exactly.
The only thing I would add to that as a must is stay on top of your updates and your patching for your software. And please do not miss out on firmware upgrades. I know providers tell their clients, we don't upgrade your drivers because we don't want things to break. Well, that's how people get in. Don't be a sucker. Don't believe that. It's better to break functionality than to break security.
A lot of the breaking of functionality can be mitigated. There depends on the functionality that you're talking about, but you're updating your firewall doesn't break a whole lot of functionality on your internal network.
Shouldn't break any.
Right?
Worst case, it breaks your VPN. You can't use that. I'm not crying for reducing a surface threat surface area.
I think the only thing I've ever seen, even back in the Sophos days when firmware was being updated on your firewall, was the DNS filtering would get all jacked up on one of the versions. And maybe
I haven't seen that in some time, but we're limited with how much Sophos we use these days. So
exactly. So I'm just saying, there's no reason to have.
Don't buy the bullshit.
Patches. Yeah.
Just patch it. So go ahead. Sorry.
If you can't proactively do it, call Shiva or myself. We'll be happy to talk to you about actually doing it for you.
I charge. When I say I help, I charge. Capitalist.
There we go.
With that, I'm done. Unless you have anything else you want to add.
Nope. Chick-fil-A's getting cold. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for tuning in for yet another episode of Amplified and Intensified. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give us a rating, share us with somebody. If you're listening to the audio version of this, please go to Apple Podcast and give us a rating. Let us know how we're doing. And if we're suck, let us know too. Again, always check us out, Amplified and Intensified. If you have any questions, comments, concerns that you want to bring up, please email info@amplifiedandintensified.com. And until next time, take care.